Hey everybody, my name is Clyde, and this little monster is the German cruiser Schill. Schill is armed with 6 283mm main battery guns and 2 quad torpedo launchers. Now those 283s might sound similar to those that you're familiar with from, say, Graf Spee or the Scharnhorst, but these ones are better, featuring better AP penetration and much faster shells. Plus, Wargaming was kind enough to equip the ship with a reload booster consumable, and we'll talk more about that later on in this video. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, this ship was provided to me for free in the hopes that I would make this video, so with that out of the way, let's get started. How does one get the Schill? Well, it's a little bit complicated, and if you want this ship, you're gonna have to jump through a few hoops. At release time, she will not be available for direct purchase from the armory. Instead, players will be able to get her in random boxes, which is a technique we've seen Wargaming use before, or by purchasing a series of sequential bundles. At the end of the sequence, you'll be able to buy Schill for just 1 credit, and she's going to come with a 10-point captain. Now, the total cost of all the bundles, basically if you buy every bundle in the sequence, is 23,975 doubloons, and that's about $96 US. I guess you can kind of think of this like an Admiral pack. It comes with a whole bunch of crap, some of which you probably want, some of which you don't, but at least you can guarantee that you're going to get the Schill if you want to spend about $100 bucks. And that's a lot of money, if you ask me. That said, the slot machine architects over at Wargaming have tried to make it a little bit more tantalizing for those of us who wouldn't buy an Admiral pack or who wouldn't buy every bundle in a series of sequential bundles. Let me explain to you what I mean. The sequential bundles include a total of 41 premium containers, each of which have a 2.5% chance of dropping Schill. If you open 41 containers, there is a 35% chance that you won't get Schill out of a container. Basically, that means there's about a 65% chance that you will get the ship. But the trouble with that is that by the time you have those 41 containers, you've already purchased all of the bundles in the sequence, and you can buy the ship for 1 credit. In order to actually get the ship for less, you're going to have to buy fewer containers and get a little bit lucky. So here's some math, which I'll put up over here on the screen, that shows your odds of buying the ship, or I should say getting the ship, if you buy a reduced number of boxes. I'll let that sit up here for a sec, but long story short, Schill is going to be a fairly expensive tier 8 for most players, but if you do go the route where you buy all of the sequential bundles, you get a whole bunch of consumables and things. It's really a value judgment for you if you think that's actually worth it, or if it's just simply too much money and you're going to pass on this one. Schill has a lot of tools in her consumables toolbox. She's got a damage control party, just like you'd expect. She's got a Hydroacoustic Search module, and it's excellent. We'll talk about this later. And of course, you can swap that out for defensive fire if you wish. She's also got a main battery reload booster that comes with 4 charges, at least in my build. And then she's got a spotting aircraft, which you can swap out for a fighter. Topping it all off, and we're really glad she's got this because she didn't early in testing, is a repair party that in my build heals 264 hit points per second over a period of 28 seconds. By way of camouflage, Schill is not exactly pushing the boundaries of what's possible. The ship is light gray with a white splotch on the bow there, a white superstructure with some camouflage elements that you can see on the corner of the superstructure as well as on the barrels. There's also a blue version of this camo that's kind of a bluish gray and features the exact same camo pattern. It's kind of really a question of do you like the gray or the blue better? I've personally been running the gray. Both of these are fine camouflages, but neither one of them makes me go, oh my gosh, I have to have the Schill. This is a video in my hot take series, and if you haven't seen one before, I would like to think that you're in for a treat. For each hot take video, we compare a ship's capabilities against those of her peers, ships of the same tier and class. For each capability, we give it a score on a scale of 0 to 5, with 5 being the best. And at the end of every hot take, I share with you my build, and I tell you why I put the ship together that way. Sound simple enough? Great, let's get started. First, we're going to talk main battery. Schill has 6 big ol' 283mm guns with a 17.3 kilometer firing range. Cruisers with big guns like this tend to have very slow reloads, and that leads to very low DPM, and Schill is absolutely not the exception to this rule. She ranks 38th out of 40 tier 8 cruisers for AP DPM, and she is dead last for HE DPM among cruisers that are actually equipped with HE, because not all of them have it. Mercifully, late in the development cycle, Wargaming decided to add a reload booster to the ship, and this cuts the reload time in half, and it runs for a full 20 seconds. If you time this just right, you can get 3 full salvos in a 20-second period, which can be very effective against targets that are sailing broadside, especially if they keep their keyboard and their mouse in 2 different rooms of the house, and they prefer shooting to driving. The guns also feature the second best AP penetration for all tier 8 cruisers, only losing out to the guns on Cherbourg and only by 5 millimeters. In addition to punching through armor really well, the shells are the fastest of any cruiser at tier 8, which is kind of unusual given the size of the shells. They do reach a target at 12 kilometers in just 5.8 seconds. In play, it feels like Schill's guns get fewer hits than those on Cherbourg or Scharnhorst or even Congress, and that might make you think that they're less accurate, but they're not. The ship has a 2.0 Sigma, and unlike other big gunned cruisers at her tier, she has regular cruiser dispersion, which should keep the shells into a tight grouping. Those fast shells make it easy to put a salvo on an enemy, and the dispersion doesn't hurt either. But the problem is that when Schill fires 6 shells, Congress fires 7, and Cherbourg fires 8. Ships with a greater number of shells in their salvo put their damage eggs, so to speak, into more than one basket. Let me explain what I mean. Schill only hits 6 points within its dispersion ellipse, and not all of those points are going to be on your intended target. Thanks to our old friend dispersion, some are going to splash into the sea, and some, despite maybe being very well aimed, are going to hit the ship too high and result in low damage overpens. Interestingly, a ship like Prinz Eugen, despite having smaller, lower damage shells, will often do more damage more reliably in many cases. And that's because Prinz Eugen and Schill actually have very similar total damage per salvo for both AP and HE shells. The difference being that Prinz Eugen fires 8 203mm shells in contrast to Schill's 6 283s. As a result, when an Eugen shell splashes into the water or ricochets off of a heavily armored turret, it doesn't reduce the realized salvo damage nearly as much as it would for Schill. It's almost like Prinz Eugen has diversified her portfolio by investing in a total stock market mutual fund, whereas Schill is just betting their entire life savings on GameStop in 2023.
Let me get this straight. You took all the money you made franchising your name and bet it against the Harlem Globetrotters?
I thought the generals were due!
It might pay off. When you do land 3 or 4 shells in a salvo, it is absolutely delightful, and it's even better if one of them is a Citadel hit. Far more commonly, however, you're going to see mediocre damage numbers pop up with water splash animations near the target. At least at first, at least until you learn to get a little bit more disciplined. To get the most out of these guns, you're going to have to wait for good angles, you're going to have to take carefully aimed shots, and even though we have cruiser dispersion on big old guns, you still have to hope for good RNG. When the stars align, you will do big damage unless you overpen, and that happens quite a bit because of the incredible penetration of these AP shells. On paper, these guns really seem like they should work, but in practice, the low shell count undercuts their ability to perform like you want them to. I'm going to rate these guns a 3 because they're just so hot and cold. They reward a patient captain who can shoot with accuracy, and if that's you, great. Big exciting salvos are possible, but they're just not as common as you want them to be. Schill comes with the exact same torpedoes that you find on Graf Spee, and that's a good thing. During the late stages of a battle, Schill does not mind playing a little bit closer to the action, and that means that you can get your torpedoes into the mix on a semi-regular basis. The launch angles are very usable for targets both in front of you and behind you, and while the damage is somewhat low, like a lot of German torpedoes, I'm going to score these torps a 3. I landed quite a few torpedoes during my testing misadventures with this ship, and I suspect that if you wind up with a Schill in your port, you'll be able to do the same. Schill ranks 6th best for hit points among tier 8 cruisers. She's also got a decent armor layout with a 27mm bow and a 30mm icebreaker, and a turtleback that provides decent armor thickness for a cruiser. While she won't stand up to broadside battleship salvos for very long, when she's angled she can shrug off larger shells. Schill is not particularly sneaky, her base detection range is 14.49 kilometers, and you can bring this value all the way down to 11.7 kilometers if you're willing to invest in Concealment Modification 1 and the Concealment Expert Commander skill. Schill's spiritual ancestor, the Graf Spee, has a heal at tier 6, and at that tier, that feels really, really special. But during most of Schill's development, she had no hull repair, no ability to recover lost hit points. And this was really brutal, especially because she suffers from long-running fires like those found on the Aegir or Alaska, those other large cruisers. Late in the development cycle, of course, the Boffins at Wargaming generously added a hull repair that comes with 2 charges that heal 7,392 hit points apiece. Unlike Graf Spee's tier 6 heal, Schill's feels rather commonplace. It's a basic necessity that is required for the ship to be able to hang in a tier 10 battle while simultaneously empowering the big cruiser to overwhelm tier 6 ships when Chrysantos blesses it with top tier matchmaking. I'm going to rate the Schill here a 4 in the category of survivability and concealment. She's a fairly tough tier 8 cruiser, and in most situations she'll be able to hang with the best of them while tanking a decent amount of damage, but she's not invincible. You'll still want to tread carefully with her, especially early in the battle when there are many sources of damage looking to smack you from across the map. For acoustics, Schill has the best hydros of any cruiser at tier 8. They have a ship detection range of 6 kilometers, and they last for a full 2 minutes. I've got to give her a perfect 5 points in this category. Those wily Germans have done it again. According to SHIPTOOL.ST, Schill's anti-aircraft guns ranked 33rd out of all tier 8 cruisers, and her max range is only 5.2 kilometers, whereas a lot of cruisers can reach out 6 kilometers at this tier. Her DPM values are also medium to mediocre at all ranges, so I'm going to rank her a 2 in this category because she's decidedly bottom third when it comes to her class and tier. Now, captains who are concerned with her ability to SWAT airplanes could swap out her hydros for defensive AA, and maybe swap her spotter for a fighter, but when you do that, you're going to deny yourself the access to her excellent hydros and the opportunity to increase her main battery range from time to time, and for me, it just is not worth it. Schill has the same airstrike ASW that is found on 26 of the 40 tier 8 cruisers, with the rest having over-the-side depth charges. I'm going to give her a 3 since 2/3 of her peers have the exact same ASW kit. It is so boring to talk about ASW armaments on ships that I might just score this section and not talk about it in future videos unless it's somehow particularly interesting, because 9 times out of 10, it's not. Let me know if you think that's a good strategy in the comments below, and we'll see what happens in the next hot take. For maneuverability, Schill, unsurprisingly, doesn't handle that well. Her top speed actually isn't all that bad. It's 32.5 knots, which isn't exceptionally slow, but it's not exceptionally fast. But her rudder shift is the 3rd worst at tier, and her turning radius is only just above the midpoint. I'm going to rate her a 2 in this category, which is not uncommon for these types of large cruisers. And she doesn't necessarily feel exceptionally clunky, but she's definitely not going to be winning any races or tests of dexterity. Is Schill an easy ship to play? I would say more or less yes. Schill is not complicated, and I know I say that about a lot of ships in this section of each one of these hot take videos. She's not complicated, despite the fact that maybe having only 6 guns makes her sometimes a little bit frustrating. She's not hard to play. The guns hit hard, and she is plenty tanky enough to do the kind of work that she's designed for. But I think a lot of players, maybe most players, would actually put up better numbers in a ship like Prinz Eugen, despite the fact that Eugen comes with 203mm guns. Eugen's higher DPM delivers almost the same amount of damage per salvo for AP, and actually more for HE. And she can shoot every 13 seconds instead of every 20 seconds, which means that players are just going to get more chances to get a lot of damage with a gun, with a ship that shoots that much more often. That said, players can really be rewarded by the big guns of Schill, provided that they're patient enough to wait for targets to present themselves in a favorable way. I'm going to rate Schill a 3 for ease of play, which I think is pretty fair. She's relatively tanky for a cruiser, she hits hard, and she excels at mid to late game cleanup, provided that you didn't barrel in too deep early in the match and get yourself killed. Is Schill a fun ship to play? Well, the Graf Spee is really fun to play at tier 6, and I know that's maybe a controversial statement. I think Graf Spee is fun to play at tier 6. What I should say is Graf Spee is imposing at tier 6. She's a bully, she's big, she's tough, she's hard to kill. But at tier 8, Schill just does not loom as large. I really wanted this ship to be special. I wanted her to punch above her weight class and bully others at her tier, and maybe even a little bit above. What really sucks is that she almost does this. She is so close to being a really great ship that you can taste it. And in the end, she's fine. Schill is sort of like a player who's been promoted from starting on the JV team to playing on the varsity team, but they're benched. They're in the locker room with ships like Petro and Alaska, Schlieffen, Ohio, Borgonia, Kronstadt, Hindenburg, Yamato. At times, she gets to take the field, and you get to see why she's really special, but just as often, she feels unexceptional. She slowly grinds out damage without so much as a citadel, and at the end of the match, you did less than you know you could have done in another ship. When you get back to port, you park her into the garage next to your Prinz Eugen, and you think, maybe I should have just played that. In the Eugen, I feel busier. I'm taking more actions more frequently, and those actions have effects. Not that they don't in the Schill, but they do have effects in the Eugen, and I just get to do more of them, so that feels good. And I know that's emotional, not mechanical. It's not mathematical. It's how you feel about a ship, but I think that's important. I get more hits in the Eugen. I do more damage in the Eugen. I still have Hydros in Eugen. I have Torpedoes. They don't go quite as far, but I have them. My DPM is higher, my reload is faster, and it makes it easier to go from battleship farming to a destroyer kill if I need to suddenly change what I'm shooting at because we finally got eyes on that little bugger. While Eugen can't get you the big hits that you occasionally post up in the Schill, the rest of the game feels better because you're participating in more of it. I had good games in the Schill, by the way. I had fun in the Schill, and I think you can too. But one thing that's really neat about Eugen, just to go back to that well a little bit more, is that you can buy that ship for a flat price, 11,300 doubloons. Does this mean that Schill is a bad ship? No, she's fine. And actually, that's kind of the worst part, because I think she should have been great. Graf Spee is great. It's really, really strong at its tier. It's probably too strong at its tier. Schill should have been like that. I'm going to rate Schill a 2 in this category, and I'm going to be honest with you, she almost earned a 3, because it isn't a bad ship. It's not an unfun ship. It's just not living up to the reputation that I wanted it to if it was going to be a tier 8 Graf Spee. If this ship had 8 guns arranged in 2 turrets instead of 6, I'd be rating her a 4 in this category, no question. She'd be so powerful. And I think Wargaming knows that. And I think that's why she has 6 guns. For my commander build, I started off with Grease the Gears as well as Gun Feeder. This is going to help me turn my guns quickly, and this is going to help me swap between shells, which is a big deal when your reload is 20 seconds. I've gone with Consumables enhancements here because I like it when my Hydros run for a really long time. This is a very Clyde-centric thing to do. I've seen other people talk about running priority target or focus fire training in this level 2 slot if you want the 2-point slot. But again, I love having an extra 10% on my Hydros, so I tend to lean that way. I did go for Superintendent mostly for the extra heal, the extra reload booster. The extra Hydros probably a waste, and the extra spotting plane's probably a waste, but the heal and the reload booster I do use. I've gone for heavy AP shells just to boost the AP damage. You're going to ride the AP almost exclusively in this ship because the HE is just really bad and the reload is so slow. So this to me was a no-brainer. I went with Adrenaline Rush in order to increase my reload time or increase the speed of my reload, I should say, as I take damage in the game. I went with Concealment Expert because I don't like being spotted, but I could see somebody trying a Lighthouse build on this, which I don't know if it's smart or not. You guys could try it and let me know what you do. And then I went with Top Grade Gunner here, which is going to increase my reload speed when I've got ships within my standard detectability range. So that's the thing where if you got rid of Concealment Expert, Top Grade Gunner would be worth more to you. I don't know what I would do with those 4 points, but if you guys have some ideas, hit me up in the comments down below this video. For my upgrades, I don't think I've done anything earth-shattering here, but I will talk through some options you could do as well. For slot 1, I've gone with main armaments modification. I think that's probably the top choice here for that slot, so I wouldn't recommend anything else. In slot 2, I've gone with a coal hydroacoustics module, but that's because I love having my Hydros run long. We just talked about this over in Captain Land, and now we're talking about it again. If I wasn't going to do that, though, I would look at Damage Control System Modification 1 because this thing has those long, large cruiser fires, and that really, really sucks to get burned to death. In slot 3, I went with Aiming System Modification 1. Somebody might say, oh, it's got secondaries and want to run a secondary build. I don't really think that's a thing. It doesn't have that much DPM, and frankly, building cruisers for secondaries is hard to do. Plus, if you pop up your spotter plane, you're going to want to reduce your dispersion as much as possible, and Aiming Systems Mod is going to help you do that. In slot 4, I've gone with Steering Gears, although I don't know that this is actually the most optimized choice. I could see somebody going for Damage Control System Modification 2 to reduce the duration of those fires and floods, and even maybe a propulsion mod would be a good pick. So I think any of these top 3 would be good. Airstrike modification is that's just not a thing. For slot 4, I've gone with Concealment, and I wouldn't choose anything else. Or I'm sorry, slot 5. I've gone with Concealment modification here, and I wouldn't go with anything else. I think that's the right choice. So that's it, everybody. That is our hot take on the Schill. What do you guys think of the boat? I'm gonna put the score over there so y'all can put it over there so y'all can check out the scores and maybe compare it against some other relevant scores. If I've got some, I'll put them up on the screen. Are you guys going to try to get the ship? Are you going to add it to your port, or are you going to skip this one? Are you team Prinz Eugen, or are you team Schill? Or maybe you're team something else entirely. I would love to know what you guys think. Hit me up in the comments down below, and I will try to answer as many of them as I can. Also, if you enjoyed this video, you'd probably like other videos on the channel. Why don't you watch some of those? And also, if you like this video, you'd probably like hanging out with us for the live show. We stream over on Twitch 3 times a week, twitch.tv/ClydePlaysLive. I would love to have you join us for the live program over there, and we can BS about ships in real time. If that's not your thing, don't worry about it. You don't have to come hang out with us on Twitch, but you might want to, and you might also want to join us on Discord. The link is in the description. You can join us where we keep the conversation going between videos and live streams, and we'd love to have you be a part of that community over there. Sometimes we do little giveaways in the Discord, and we definitely do giveaways over on Twitch. So with all of that said, I am going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate that very, very much. We will see you in our next video, battle, or live stream. Words are hard, but until I see you next time, thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourself and take care of each other, because the world could use that right now. Bye. Okay, so what the hell was that? My phone just making a noise? No, I just made it up. I'm just crazy.